Okay. Act 3, Scene 4. Enter at the Macbeth castle. A banquet is prepared.
Yay.
Macbeth, Lady Macbeth, Ross, Lennox, lords, and their attendants all enter for the dinner party.
So they're at Macbeth's castle?
Yes, they're back in the castle.
They are at the
Okay.
castle and having supper?
Yes. Thad, will you be Macbeth?
Sure, hold on.
Who wants to be Lady?
I can.
And who wants to be Ross?
I can.
So, Lexi, you be Lennox. And when it says lords, that means you two recite together. Okay. So, there are certain protocol that these guys would need to follow during a dinner party. For instance, you're around the table. No one is able to sit until the host or the king sits. Same thing with when you would leave the table, you would need to go in order from highest ranking to lowest ranking. So there would be some protocol that people would be familiar with. Okay, Macbeth.
You know your own degrees. Sit down. At first and last, the hearty welcome.
Thanks to your majesty.
Ourself will mingle with society and play the humble host. Our hostess keeps her estate, but in best time we will require her welcome.
Pronounce it for me, sir, to all our friends, for my heart speaks they are welcome.
So they're kind of having a little social hour, sitting down at the table. Macbeth looks over to the door and sees the first murderer is standing in the doorway. So he excuses himself from the table and goes over to the doorway to talk to him.
See, they encounter thee with their heart's thanks. Both sides are even. Here I'll sit in the midst, be large in mirth. Anon we'll drink a measure, the table round.
And then he walks to the door. So he says, look, everybody have a drink. And then he kind of tries to sneak over to the doorway.
There's blood upon thy face.
'Tis Banquo's then.
'Tis better thee without than he within. Is he dispatched?
My lord, his throat is cut. That I did for him.
Thou art the best of the cutthroats, yet he's good that did the like for Fleance. If thou didst it, thou art a non-parallel, or parallel.
Most royal sir, Fleance escaped.
Then comes my fit again. I had else been perfect, whole as the marble, founded as the rock, as broad and general as the casing air. But now I am cabined, cribbed, confined, bound in to saucy doubts and fears. But Banquo's safe?
My good lord. Safe in a ditch he bides, with 20 trenched gashes on his head, the least a death to nature.
Thanks for that. There the grown serpent bites. The worm that's fled hath nature that in time will venom breed. No teeth for the present. Get thee gone. Tomorrow we'll hear ourselves again.
And he leaves. Okay, I told you the other day, there are a lot of very famous metaphors in this play. We have the seed that grows and reaps a harvest for the king. We had one on, was that Friday or Thursday? I can't remember. And today we have another. There, this grown serpent lies. The worm that's fled hath nature in him, that in time will venom breed. So what is Macbeth's fear?
That Banquo's going to get rid of Fleance going to get rid of.
Okay, that Fleance knows things he shouldn't and will definitely suspect Macbeth played a part in his father's murder. Macbeth says at the bottom of 99, then comes my fit again. I had else been perfect, whole as marble, but now I am cabined, cribbed, confined. So up until this moment, things have
fine.
His plans have all
Work.
worked out exactly as he
When
designed them to work. But now, for the first time,
He's worried.
he is worried.
Wait, so he hasn't sat down yet. Does that mean all the rest of them are standing there?
So he told them to sit and have a drink. He went to the door. Now, where it's going to pick back up, his wife is calling to him like, hey, we got this party waiting for you. So, go ahead, Kylie. Page 101.
My royal lord, you do not give the cheer. The feast is sold, that is not often vouched. While 'tis a making, 'tis given with welcome. To feed were best at home. From thence the sauce to meat is ceremony. Meeting were bare without it.
And then it says, enter the ghost of Banquo.
Okay,
Sits in Macbeth's face.
so Lady Macbeth says, we can't eat
You
until
sit down.
you sit down, so
Sit your butt on the
can you hurry it up?
Her reaction to his absence.
Yes.
And Macbeth says, sweet remembrance, sir. Now good digestion wait on appetite, and health on both.
So Macbeth, in between Macbeth walking back to the table and his wife's speech, this phantom appears. Now, if we're watching this on stage in 1400, is somebody holding a sheet
No.
and dangling it from the rafters? No, a person literally just walks in. They would probably look like what?
Banquo.
Like it's probably the
Person it's meant
actor that played Banquo, except now he's
Probably grayed out.
painted white or grayed out in some way to suggest his
Disappearance.
Non-existence.
the fact that he's now dead. Okay? So Macbeth comes back to the table. Lennox says,
May it please your highness sit.
Here had we now our country's honor roofed. Were the graced person of our Banquo present, who may I rather challenge for unkindness than pity for mischance.
His absence, sir, lays blame upon his promise. Please it your highness to grace us with your royal company.
so they're like, oh, that's really shady of Banquo not to show up. And so then Ross says, will you please sit down? Macbeth says,
The table's full.
Lennox points to the chair next to him.
Here is a place reserved, sir.
Where?
Here, my good lord. What is it that moves your highness?
So Lennox is going, there's a chair right here. Macbeth says,
No, where?
there's no chair.
It's taken.
So the other people at the table
Kind of looking around weird.
do not see
Banquo.
The ghost?
Banquo's ghost, but Macbeth can see it. And so when Lennox says, what is it that moves your highness? Macbeth has reacted. He has noticed that the person sitting in the chair by Lennox is the ghost of Banquo, and he is freaked out.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Me, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Which one of you have done this?
Lords?
All of you?
What, my good lord? And Macbeth is pointing at the ghost now.
Thou canst not say I did it. Never shake thy gory locks at me.
And so the ghost is sitting there going like this to him.
Shaking his head wide.
Mhm.
Just,
Okay, go ahead.
gentlemen, rise. His highness is not well.
Now, Lady Macbeth reacts quickly. Remember, she has no idea what's going on either. And she covers for her husband really fast.
Sit, worthy friends. My lord is often thus and hath been from his use. his youth. Pray you, keep seat. The fit is momentary. Upon a thought, he will again be well. If much you note him, you shall offend him, and extend his passion. Feed and regard him not.
And then she grabs Macbeth and pulls him aside. So what does she tell all the guests?
Oh, you're just
You're
having
gonna upset him more.
This happens to him
all the time.
all the time. The more you make note of it,
The worse it gets.
the worse it gets. Go on, have another drink. And she pulls Macbeth aside and says to him in a very harsh tone,
Are you a man?
Aye, and a bold one, that dare look on that which might appall the devil.
Oh, proper stuff. This is the very painting of your fear. This is the air-drawn dagger which you said led you to Duncan. Oh, these flaws and starts, impostors to true fear, would well become a woman's story at a winter's fire, authorized by her grandam. Shame itself. Why do you make such faces? When all's done, you look but on a stool.
okay, now, she thinks that this little fit he's having
Is over Duncan?
is over Duncan. That it's just like the hallucination he had about the dagger. Is this a dagger I see before me? Right before he went into Duncan's chamber. So she tells him, you're acting like a
Girl.
woman
And his fear
again.
is very silly, kind of.
That your fear is ridiculous. It's like an old wives' tale being told around the fire. Okay?
Yeah?
Yep.
Prithee, see there, behold, look.
And then he's like, can't you see this? And the
So
answer
Ghost
is,
taught Macbeth, he's shaking
no,
his head.
no one else can see. Yes, he's shaking his head. Then he looks at the ghost again and says,
Lo, how say you? What care I? If thou canst nod, speak too. If charnel houses and our graves must send those that we bury back our monuments, shall be the maws of kites.
okay, and if we look in the side, charnel houses, those are like vaults that people are buried in. And then the rest of that, it means only our burial vaults will be the stomachs of birds of prey. Okay, so like when a body is put in a vault, an open-sided vault, crows and vultures, well, probably not vultures, but animals can still get in there and pick the flesh away from the dead body, right?
Wait, what is this saying?
So he says, if charnel houses and our graves must send those back we bury, our monuments shall be the maw of kites, meaning our monuments are the food for these birds of prey. Like, they can't keep our dead anymore. Now, again, what are the people around the table thinking right now?
He's
Yeah,
going
crazy.
nuts.
Yeah, and
How
this
did he
is...
join them back though. Like
We
he
haven't
just-
got there yet. I don't-
Yeah, he hasn't come back to the table yet.
But then how are they reacting if they haven't? If he's not even in the same
He's
room?
in the room.
Oh, I thought.
He's just kind of like away from the table. So then the ghost leaves the room. And Lady Macbeth is like, what is wrong with you?
Stop acting stupid. What quite unman folly.
If I stand here, I saw him.
Fie for shame.
And she's just like, you have got to be kidding me.
Are
You're
doing-
such an idiot. Okay. And Macbeth says,
Blood hath been shed ere now in the olden time, ere humane statute purged the gentle wheel. Aye, and since too murders have been performed, too terrible for the ear. The time has been that when the brains were out, the man would die, and there an end. But now they rise again with 20 moral murders on their crowns, and push us from our stools. This is more strange than such a murder is.
so he says, he's kind of talking to himself, but to his wife, but she has no idea what he's talking about. She thinks he's talking about
Duncan.
Duncan. He's talking about
Banquo.
Banquo probably and Duncan, and he's not making very much sense to her. But in his mind, he's saying people have been murdered since the beginning of time. Since when do they come back from the grave and haunt me? Or haunt the killer?
So they're just saying that now they're coming back to haunt him?
I know there's a question about now they rise again with 20 mortal murders on their crowns, which is probably a reference to the fact that Banquo, the murderer, said he gave him 20 mortal gashes so that he like bashed his head in, and when the ghost of Banquo came back, he had that head wound that the murderer gave him. Okay, now Lady Macbeth's trying to restore some sense of normalcy here. She senses that her husband is coming back to her from this fit, and so she says,
My worthy lord, your noble friends do lack you.
I do forget. Do not muse at me, my most worthy friends. I have strange infirmity, which is nothing to those that know me. Come, love and health to all. Then I'll sit down. Give me some wine, fill full.
okay, and so he says, oh, thank you for your patience. I'm back. I'm sorry. Let's all have a toast. And when he raises his glass, the ghost comes back, but Macbeth doesn't notice it at first. So he's got his cup up. All the Thanes are like, okay, this is weird, but he's our king. So they put up their cups.
I drink to the general joy of the whole table and to our dear friend Banquo, whom we miss. Would he were here. To all in him we thirst, and all to all.
Sorry, I was typing.
To me?
Our
Both of you.
Oh,
our duties and the pledge. And they raise their glasses to clink. And
Ghost comes back.
Macbeth notices the ghost, and so he says to him, in even more terror than before,
Avaunt, and quit my sight. Let the earth hide thee. Thy bones are marrowless. Thy blood is cold. Hold on, I can't turn the page. Thou hast no speculation in those eyes which thou dost glare with.
and everybody knows he's seeing or thinking of something like a dead person now.
Oh, yeah.
So before, maybe there were some question marks. Now when he says, thy blood, thy bones are marrowless, thy blood is cold, everyone should be kind of getting an idea here of what he's talking about. And so Lady Macbeth is like, shitteth hath hitteth the fan. And she starts to make a move here.
Oh my god. Think of this, good peers, but as a thing of custom, 'tis no other. It only spoils the pleasure of the time.
And he's still speaking to the ghost.
What man dare I dare? Approach thou like the rugged Russian bear, the armed rhinoceros, or thy
Hirkin.
Hirkin tiger. Take any shape but that, and my firm nerves shall never tremble. Or be alive again, and dare me to the desert with thy sword, if trembling I inhabit then, protest me, the baby of a girl. Hence, horrible shadow, unreal mockery, hence.
And the ghost floats away, so he says, you could be anything. You could be anything. Any of these horrible creatures. Bear, rhinoceros, tiger, and I wouldn't be scared. But of you, I am scared. Leave my sight. And the ghost leaves, and he continues.
Why so being gone? I am a man again. Pray you sit still.
You have displayed the mirth, broke the good beating with the most admired disorder.
Can such things be and overcome us like a summer's cloud, without our special wonder? You make me strange even to the disposition that I owe, when now I think you can behold such sights, and keep the natural ruby of your cheeks when mine is blanched with fear.
So he says, how can you guys all look fine after what we just saw? And Ross says, I don't know
I'm
who Ross
Ross.
says.
What sights, my lord?
I pray you speak not. He grows worse and worse. Question enrages him. At once, good night. Stand not upon the order of your going, but go at once.
Good night and better health. Attend his majesty.
A kind good night to all.
And so everyone except Lady Macbeth and Macbeth get up and leave. What does she mean when she says, stand not upon the order of your going, but go at once?
Don't be all formal about it. Just
Right.
leave.
Don't be proper. Just get the heck out of here. And so once they're all gone, Macbeth says,
It will have blood, they say. Blood will have blood. Stones have been known to move, and trees to speak. Augurs and understood relations have, by magpies and choughs and rooks, brought forth the secretest of man of blood. What is thy night? What is the night?
Almost at odds with morning. Which is which?
How sayest thou that Macduff denies his person at our great bidding?
okay, so in the time it took for the thanes to leave, Macbeth kind of got a grip on himself. Now remember, he still has not revealed this evening's events to anyone, including
His wife.
his dear and respectable wife. And suddenly, this is a very famous passage. It will have blood, they say. Blood will have blood. Meaning,
Flans is going to come back
Some
and kill
sort
him.
of vengeance thing?
yeah, some sort of vengeance that this one blood spill, well actually we're on like number 5 blood spill, but is not the end of it. And he suddenly remembers that one of his kinsmen, one of his thanes, was absent from dinner tonight. Macduff, who we've only had present during one scene, which was what?
The knock scene.
When Macduff was the one who
Saw the king.
was waiting at the castle gates with the knocking, who was the first to lay eyes on Duncan's dead body. Since then, Macduff has not been back. Okay? And Macbeth, out of the blue, in his delirium, realizes that. So, Lady Macbeth says,
Did you send to him, sir?
I hear it by the way, but I will send. There's not a one of them, but in his house I keep a servant feed. I will tomorrow, and betimes I will, to the weird sisters. The more shall they speak, for now I am bent to know, by the worst means the worst. For mine own good, all causes shall give way. I am in blood stepped in so far that, should I wait no more, returning were as tedious as go over. Strange things I have in head that will go to hand, which must be acted ere they be scanned. They may be scanned.
You lack the season of all natures, sleep.
Come, will to sleep. My strange and self-abuse is the initiate fear that once hard use. We are yet but young.
there's so many famous lines on this one page. Okay, so what's his plan for tomorrow?
Wake up. Send for Macduff. And see what goes on.
And go see...
the witches.
Go see the witches and find out what they know. Have things changed? And their first predictions are all used up, so he needs
New ones.
more information. Then we have this second really famous line. I am in blood, stepped in so far that should I wade across would be as tedious as returning.
So he's gone this far killing people that it'd just be kind of stupid to go back now.
Yes, so if
Let's take it
he
back.
tried to turn back, it would be just as difficult as
Going forward.
continuing forward. Then at the end, he says, strange things I have in head that will to hand. So, remember at the beginning of the play, what did he need to do after he had an idea?
Write it down.
Okay, what else?
Wait, what?
When he got an idea, what did he need to do before he acted on it?
Run it by his wife?
Run it by his wife. Think about it a little bit. Now, when he thinks of something, he
just
does it. He doesn't provide that processing time for himself. Then his wife says, you lack the season of all natures, sleep. Remember I told you that sleep was going to be something we paid attention to. It's probably true that Macbeth has not slept
In a few days.
since
Duncan died.
Duncan's murder. Now, it's questionable how many days that actually has been. This is the first night back in his palace since he murdered Duncan. But how many days passed between the murder, his coronation, and his return? It's uncertain. Could have been 3, could have been 2, could have been 1. That's one of the weird things about Shakespeare plays is that we don't always know the timetable. But there's a very good chance that Macbeth has not rested, really truly rested since then. Then the last line of the scene, we are but young indeed, implying that there is still
More to commit.
more to accomplish